Ka-chow's poppin' YouTube. Today we're going to be looking at a British cultural icon with A Study in Scarlet, the first ever Sherlock Holmes story. So this story opens on your boy, John Watson.
Here comes that bullshit, what up?
He's an army vet from the Anglo-Afghan conflict and he is back in London, baby. But he's broke as shit and needs a roommate.
He's broke. He's a brokey.
So he meets up with this guy in the army that he knows, and this guy tells him that John is actually the second person he's met today that needs a roommate, so he takes him to go and see this absolute nutter called Sherlock Holmes. He's over at the local morgue whipping corpses for purely academic reasons, and Sherlock Holmes is this very crazy, very eccentric fellow. He's very animated, unlike the Benedict Cumberbatch version, and he manages to figure out everything about John Watson because of the powers of deduction, which is straight up magic half the time in this, but anyway, they hit it off great and go to look at the flat at 221B Baker Street together. They decide it's good. John makes some comment about how once all the junk's moved out, they'll be ready to move in, but then it turns out Sherlock has actually already moved all his stuff in because he knew that they would be roommates because of deduction, I guess, and this is all treated like a joke, but it's not really that funny. But, anyways, the two live together for a bit. All these weird people keep coming in to see Sherlock, and Watson has no fucking clue what's going on. But then this policeman called Lestrade comes over to talk to Sherlock Holmes, and it turns out Sherlock is actually a consultant detective. So regular people, and sometimes Scotland Yard, come to him for help. So when Scotland Yard gets a case too tough to crack, which is actually quite a lot of the time, they bring him in. So Mr. Lestrade calls in Holmes, and Watson tags along. They go across town to this murder scene. It's at this strange old house. This guy has been killed, poisoned to be precise, and the word rash, the German word for revenge, has been scribbled on the wall in blood. The other policeman at the scene, whose name escapes me, thinks that he was spelling the word Rachel, but Sherlock figures out that it actually is the German word for revenge. I don't know how to pronounce it, I don't speak German, sorry. So a side note here, this is actually funny because in the BBC TV show version they did the opposite, with Anderson thinking that they'd spelt Rash and it actually been Rachel. I just thought I'd point it out as I think it's a cool little Easter egg. Now you can wow your girlfriends with this little factoid if you ever watch that random 15-year-old BBC Sherlock show with them, and you're welcome, I guess.
What can I say except you're welcome?
So anyway, at the murder scene they also found a ring. Forgot to mention that, but... So Sherlock and Watson go back home and Sherlock puts out an ad in the paper saying that he found the ring. He wants to bait the killer into coming back for it as he thinks it belongs to them and that it is important. Sure enough, some old woman contacts them about the ring and takes it. Sherlock wants to follow her as he thinks she is working for the killer and will lead them straight to him. But the old lady manages to give Sherlock the slip and get into a taxi. And it turns out they were just wearing a disguise and they weren't actually an old woman at all. What a prank. So then a bit later another murder happens. This time the guy was stabbed. Rash is written, I don't know how to pronounce it. German Revenge is written, and they also found a telegram saying JH is in Europe, and a box with 2 pills. So Sherlock does some tests and learns that one is the poison pill, and the other does nothing. At some point in this whole thing, he sent out his street Arabs, as he calls them. I think they're just supposed to be like homeless kids, or just like a street gang or something, but he calls them street Arabs, which I'm sure there's some like sort of 1800s British racism from where that term comes from. But that's what the book calls them. So anyway, to gather some information. At some point, he gets the street Arabs to call him a cab, and when the cabbie gets there, Sherlock asks him to help him come up and take some luggage down. But the cabbie comes upstairs, but Sherlock Holmes just jumps him and handcuffs him and says that this is Jefferson Hope, the murderer of the 2 guys. If this came out of nowhere, you're not alone, because it comes out of fucking nowhere.
And now for something completely different.
Then the story takes a hard 180-degree turn, and we get treated to the killer's backstory, which is actually 100% a better story than the Sherlock Holmes part. Like, I would read the killer's story, like, just on its own. It's a great little short story, but, anyway, so we cut to America in 1847. America! Fuck yeah! Well, this expedition has gone horribly wrong. There are only 2 people left, this older man called John Ferrier and a little girl called Lucy. Everyone else has died, Lucy's parents, Ferrier's wife, etc, etc. Anyway, they are dying when they stumble across a bunch of Mormons going out into Utah. They're allowed to tag along if they convert to Mormonism, and without any other real choice, the two of them agree. So, Ferrier takes Lucy as his adopted daughter, and they travel with the Mormons to Utah to set up a colony, or whatever it is Mormons do. Things are pretty good for a while. Utah is a booming.
Business is a booming.
And Ferrier becomes pretty rich, getting himself a nice little homestead.
Let me tell you guys that I started 137 days ago with only $25,610, and right now I am reaching $140,000. Whoa, what's up?
There's a little bit of tension between him and the other Mormons because he never remarried or anything after his original wife died back on the expedition, and they think he might be sort of fibbing about the whole Mormonism thing. So anyway, Lucy grows older and is now smoking hot, and some people are coming through Utah picking up work and stuff, and one of them is Jefferson Hope. Lucy falls in love with him, and the two of them are happy. However, Jefferson has to go off and work in the mountains to make money. But he says when he'll come back, the plan is that she will leave with him to get married. However, Chief Mormon Man says to Ferrier that Lucy has to marry a Mormon man and join one of the harems, or there will be severe repercussions. The two options are the two guys who got murdered in England.
But what if I don't want to?
You have to. There are no other candidates.
Ferrier immediately sends for Jefferson to come and evac his daughter, as he doesn't want her to marry a Mormon. He then tries to wait it out until Jefferson comes back to save his daughter, as the Mormon leader gave Lucy a month to choose which harem to join. Luckily, one day before the deadline, Jefferson shows up, realises something is up, sneaks onto the homestead, and they escape under the cover of darkness. However, while in the wilderness, Jefferson goes to hunt a bit of food and gets lost. When he gets back to the camp, the Mormons have caught up with them, killed Ferrier, and taken Lucy back to be married off. She dies of depression Padme style, and when Jefferson gets back to town, he manages to take her wedding ring before she's buried. This is the ring familiar, in case it wasn't obvious. He then declares vengeance on the two harem leaders, but has to go and get medical help because of an aneurysm. When he returns to Utah, he learns there's been a schism in the Mormon church, and the two men in question have fled. He then sets off on a 20-year chase after them, eventually ending up in Europe and then England. He becomes a cabbie to get money and manages to pick up the first guy when he's drunk as fuck. He takes him to the first house and reveals who he is. He offers the guy the choice of pills for some reason. I can't remember if this is ever actually explained in the book. Like, this guy just has a Batman villain-style gimmick now for some reason. Anyway, the Mormon guy took the poison pill and died, and as he did so, Jefferson showed him the wedding ring. His nose then began to bleed because of his aneurysm, and so he used blood to write I can't fucking say it. German revenge on the wall to prank the investigators. Like, straight up, there's actually no reason why he did it. He just did it to throw the authorities through a hoop or something. He also lost the ring and all the excitement. Anyway, when news of this hit Mormon 2, he locked himself in a hotel room, but Jefferson just climbs in anyway, offers him the pills. Mormon 2 doesn't go out like a little bitch like the other one. He attacks Jefferson, but Jefferson just stabs him. Writes rash, and then leaves. Then he gets snagged by Sherlock. We then jump back to present day. Sherlock explains how he managed to deduce all that somehow, and Jefferson confesses. However, he doesn't actually say who the granny was who took the ring. I haven't read any other Sherlock Holmes books, so I don't know if this plotline ever goes anywhere. But before Jefferson can be hanged, he just fucking dies of his aneurysm. The police then get all the credit, and Watson tells Sherlock that he should write the thing down and publish it so people know it's actually him. Sherlock says no, but Watson decides to do it anyway, and that's what we just read. The end. So this book is really interesting, not because it's actually good, just because it's the first Sherlock Holmes story.
Yeah, they had us the first half, I'm not gonna lie.
I think everyone should give this a read just to see the character's humble beginnings. But anyway, aside from the basic themes of Mormon's bad, I don't know what... I really don't know what Sir Arthur Conan Doyle had with Mormons problem-wise, but this, other than that, this book doesn't really have anything else to say. It's basic pulp fiction from the 1800s. This is the equivalent of like what a Marvel movie would have been at the time. So there's no great literary themes to discuss here. However, I don't think this story is particularly good. Sherlock and Watson are cool characters and the dynamic carries the story, but the mystery is really weird. Like, why did Jefferson do all the theatrics? He never had a flamboyant part to his personality in the flashbacks or anything. The Mormon angle is really bizarre, and the resolution is just anticlimactic and lazy. It feels like Doyle didn't really know who the killer was going to be until he came to write the flashback, and then the flashback character ended up being completely different to the first part. It's just strange. I know there's been a 20-year gap between the two, but like, the whole thing is really, really, really weird. I also just don't like how sort of good the villain ends up being. Like, you feel no sense of sort of catharsis or accomplishment when Holmes actually catches him, as Jefferson is just straight up the protagonist of a completely different and better story. Like, Jefferson is the main character here. I guess I can applaud Doyle for that kind of ballsy take of having a completely morally grey story. So in that sense, it's cool. I just wish Jefferson was actually a bad person. In the end, I just feel bad for him, actually. And I don't even feel like Sherlock is exactly serving justice by catching him. The show did this much better by having the Jefferson character. I can't remember if it's called Jefferson in that, but the cab driver from the Study in Pink episode, having him still have the sort of understandable motivation of his family and him with like a chronic disease and all that. I think it might even be an aneurysm in it actually. But he's morally worse than Sherlock, right? Because if you think about it, in the time period, Jefferson was just going to be hanged anyway. So this society is completely fine with killing people for the crime of murder. So why is Jefferson killing the two guys who helped kill Ferrier wrong? It's a really weird and muddled moral argument. And finally, I actually want to talk about something that bothers me in this story and in lots of stories, actually, mystery stories. So this is not a fair mystery, and by that I mean it's not a mystery that gives me the information. It withholds a lot of information, so I can't figure it out. I'll explain. So, most mystery stories actually do fall into this, I think, but when going through a mystery, I, as the audience, want a real chance to be able to figure everything out. I want all the information. I want to be able to potentially figure stuff out before the character does, but at the very least, I want to be given the information at the same time as the character gets it. That's a fair mystery. Harry Potter's a great example of this. We can figure out the story as Harry goes through because we get given the information at the same time that he does. He doesn't have excess knowledge that he doesn't share with the reader. This story, many others like it, do not play fair with the audience, and as such there is no way for us to actually figure it out. Sherlock has a bunch of info he doesn't share with Watson, and by extension the audience, until the very end. Info that we cannot get from anywhere and are never given. So most of the story is a villain origin story flashback that happens once the main plot has wrapped up. It just defeats the point of a mystery story for me. I want to be given the info so I can figure it out. So when all the chips fall at the end, I can go through and think, holy shit, what an amazing piece of foreshadowing or setup, or this author really knew what they were doing. But I can't do that here. It's lazy and doesn't play fair with me. But anyway, I mean, that was Sherlock Holmes, A Study in Scarlet. How this story managed to spawn one of the most iconic characters in history, I actually don't know. But it's alright. My biggest takeaway from this is Jefferson Hope did nothing wrong. I'd give this book 2 out of 5. It's not really that good, but it launched the whole Sherlock Holmes thing and is a very, very short read, so I would still recommend you check it out. Thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe, and maybe buy one of my books if you know.
Buy my book! Buy my book! Before it's too late, people!
There's a guy in the place who's got a bit of sweet face, and he goes by the name of Ebenezer Good. His friends call him Easer, and he is the main geezer, and he vibe by the place like no other man could.